When you walk away from a woman, she doesn't forget you. She remembers you louder than ever. Not because you texted, not because you begged, but because you stopped completely. You see, silence is a strange teacher. It makes her replay every word you never said, every look you gave that she ignored, every calm moment she mistook for indifference. And here's the truth. Most men never understand. A woman doesn't start missing you when you leave. She starts missing you when she realizes you're not coming back. That's when the silence stops being peace and starts becoming punishment, not from you, but from her own mind. Today, we're diving into the psychology behind that shift. Why walking away isn't weakness. Why silence isn't emptiness. And how self-control turns distance into desire. Because the moment you walk away like a man who values himself, she starts remembering you, not with her eyes, but with her regrets. When you walk away from a woman, something subtle but powerful happens, not in her heart first, but in her psychology. It's the law of scarcity, one of the oldest truths about human nature. We never value what's constant. We crave what's rare. When you were always there, texting back instantly, showing up when she called, explaining. When she withdrew, your presence became predictable, and predictability, over time, dulls appreciation. It doesn't matter how good, kind, or loyal you were when something feels guaranteed. The mind stops registering it as valuable. But when you walk away with strength, not resentment, everything changes. You don't just leave a space in her life. You create a vacuum, and that vacuum makes her nervous system wake up. At first, she doesn't feel sadness. She feels imbalance. It's the same feeling people get when they suddenly lose access to something they unconsciously depended on, the sound that's always been there, the presence that made their days feel full. You're gone, but your absence echoes louder than your words ever did. This is where the recall loop begins, a psychological mechanism that keeps the human mind replaying unfinished patterns. When you stop giving attention that she once had easy access to, her brain doesn't process it as he's gone. It processes it as something's missing. I need to understand what happened. That uncertainty keeps her mind circling back to you. She replays old conversations. The calm tone in your voice. The way you didn't flinch when she tested you. The way you walked away without drama. Every detail becomes a clue in a mystery her ego now wants to solve. And that's the paradox. She didn't appreciate you when you were available because her ego felt secure. But once that security disappears, the same ego turns restless. It starts whispering. Why isn't he reacting? Why isn't he chasing? Why doesn't he need me? That's when curiosity turns into craving. The more silent you stay, the louder her internal dialogue becomes. The more grounded you remain, the more chaotic her emotions feel. She may distract herself, date others, post pictures, or act unbothered. But all of it is part of the same pattern reaction to absence. The truth is, silence isn't just absence. It's contrast. It reminds her of the energy you brought into her life, the calm, masculine stability that few men embody. You didn't have to argue. You didn't have to prove. You just withdrew with composure. And that composure that refusal to seek reassurance becomes magnetic, because deep down, women are not drawn to chaos. They're drawn to the man who can hold still in chaos. Every man can talk. Few can be silent. Every man can show emotion. Few can control it. And when you show her that your silence is not emptiness, but self-respect, it creates a kind of tension she can't explain. Psychologically, your absence flips the roles. When you were present, she had control. She could call, text, test, and get a reaction. That gave her comfort. But once you remove access, she no longer knows where she stands. That uncertainty activates her attachment system, the primal instinct that seeks connection and validation. She begins chasing clarity, not consciously, but emotionally. And this is why walking away with strength isn't about manipulation. It's about reclaiming equilibrium. You're no longer trying to convince her of your value. You're allowing her to experience it through absence. Because what the mind can't have, it magnifies. Most men destroy this effect by breaking the silence too soon. They panic. They send the just checking in text. They post photos designed to provoke a reaction. But every time you do that, you collapse the scarcity. You remind her she still has access, and the spell breaks. True power lies in restraint, not in what you say, but in what you don't, not in how fast you move, but in how steady you remain. When you walk away, the goal isn't to hurt her, it's to heal your attachment to needing her validation. And when you reach that state, when you no longer crave a response, she starts craving yours. She doesn't miss you because you're gone. She misses you because the world feels different without your calm energy in it. The silence becomes heavy. The contrast becomes sharp. And every little thing a song, a memory, a phrase starts echoing with your absence. That's when her psychology begins to turn against her. Not because you did anything manipulative, but because you understood a truth. Most men overlook when presence becomes rare. Its value becomes infinite. So don't chase. Don't remind. Don't explain. Let your silence speak. Because in that silence, she doesn't just hear the absence of your words, she hears the reflection of her own choices. When you walk away, what truly shakes her isn't your absence, it's the emotional contrast you leave behind. Contrast is one of the most powerful forces in psychology. It's the mind's way of recognizing value. We don't notice light until it disappears into darkness. We don't understand warmth until we're standing in the cold. And she doesn't grasp your presence, your calm, your energy, your steady, masculine rhythm until it's suddenly gone. At first, she doesn't consciously miss you. She misses what you made her feel. That ease, that sense of balance, the subtle comfort that comes from knowing there's someone steady in her corner. When you were around, she could text you, vent, flirt, or test, and each time, your energy created a consistent emotional tone. Even if she didn't always value it, her nervous system did. It adjusted to your rhythm, to the steadiness of your presence. But the moment you step away, that rhythm stops, and her emotional world goes silent. It's not punishment. It's contrast. Her system goes from stability to uncertainty, from comfort to tension, from fullness to void. And because the human brain is wired to crave equilibrium, she subconsciously starts reaching for the source of that missing stability, you. The silence you leave doesn't just echo in her mind, it disorients her. Think of it like removing a song from a playlist she's been listening to on repeat. The melody still plays in her memory, but she can't hear it anymore. So she replays it mentally, trying to fill the space. That's why silence isn't emptiness, it's memory amplified. The moments she once brushed off now return with force. The way you laughed softly at her sarcasm, the calm way you spoke when she tried to provoke you, the quiet confidence in your eyes when she tested your limits. Each one re-emerges, sharper, more vivid, more emotional, because now she has nothing new to overwrite them. You've left a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. Her mind rushes to fill it with you. That's emotional contrast in motion. It's not about manipulation. It's about the inevitable psychological reaction that happens when something consistent disappears. We value things in opposition. Joy only matters because pain exists. Presence only feels powerful after absence. And your withdrawal calm, quiet, and disciplined creates a contrast that her heart can't ignore. The most fascinating part, this contrast works even if she doesn't consciously realize it. She might post more, go out more, talk louder, laugh harder, but all of it is compensation noise to cover the silence you left behind. The more she performs happiness, the more it reveals that she's chasing the feeling you once gave her effortlessly. Most men ruin this phase because they fear the silence. They think, if I don't remind her I exist, she'll forget me. But that's not how attraction works. The human mind doesn't forget experiences that created contrast. It fixates on them. When you step back completely, she can't just scroll past you. You're in her nervous system now. Every dull conversation she has reminds her of how alive she felt with you. Every half-hearted connection reminds her what depth felt like. Every man who tries too hard reminds her of the one who didn't have to. That's when nostalgia starts to bloom. And nostalgia is powerful because it doesn't argue, it whispers. It tells her that what she had with you was real. It paints you in golden light, softening your flaws, exaggerating your strength. Her memory becomes biased in your favor, because the absence created the contrast that amplifies your impact. But for this to work, the contrast must be complete. You can't walk away and still like her posts. You can't say you're done, then answer her texts at midnight. Every little breadcrumb you give her dulls the edge of the silence. Partial withdrawal doesn't create mystery, it creates confusion. And confusion is the enemy of longing. If you truly want her to feel the difference, you have to let the contrast cut clean. No updates, no reminders, no emotional leakage. Because that's when her mind has to fill in the blanks, and her imagination always paints you bigger, better, stronger than before. Remember this, people don't miss comfort, they miss emotion. They miss the way something made them feel alive. And walking away with self-control makes you unforgettable because it gives her the rarest feeling of all emotional clarity through absence. Every day she doesn't hear from you, that feeling grows sharper. Every night she wonders where you are. The contrast deepens, and eventually She won't just think about you, she'll feel you again, through the emptiness. That's the paradox of contrast. You don't become unforgettable by trying to stay visible. You become unforgettable by vanishing with purpose. You turn silence into signal. You turn absence into attraction. You turn composure into power. Don't remind her of what she lost. Let her feel it, because in the end, emotional contrast isn't about proving you're better. It's about showing, without words, that you were different. And once her heart recognizes that difference, no amount of noise can drown out the echo you left behind. When you walk away, something strange happens inside her mind, not instantly, not with a bang, but with a quiet restlessness that grows stronger every day. That restlessness has a name: curiosity. At first, she tells herself she's fine. She'll scroll, distract herself, dive into the noise of life. But in the spaces between the pause before bed, the silence between songs, her thoughts drift toward you, not because she wants to, but because her mind needs to close the loop. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the human brain's obsession with unfinished stories. When something ends abruptly or without explanation, our thoughts circle it endlessly, searching for closure. And your silence, your absence, is the biggest open loop of all. She thought she had you figured out, predictable, reachable, safe. Then suddenly, you vanished. No drama, no explanation, no emotional explosion for her to decode, just calm disappearance. And that calm is what drives her insane. Because women don't fear losing a man, they fear not knowing why they lost him. Every day that passes, that unanswered question grows louder. Why hasn't he reached out? Is he really done with me? Has he moved on? Or is he testing me? Each question feeds the next until curiosity turns into compulsion. She checks your profile. Even if she told her friends she blocked you, she asks mutual acquaintances about you casually. But too often, she reads into the smallest signals: a story post, a song lyric, a change in your profile picture. Her imagination becomes your greatest ally, because it always paints you as larger, calmer, more mysterious than you actually are. That's the paradox of curiosity. The less she knows, the more she feels. When you withhold information, her mind creates meaning, and that meaning, built on uncertainty, becomes addictive. Most men kill this power by overexposing themselves. They walk away but still announce their every move. They post the gym selfie, the new chapter caption, the half-hidden story aimed at her. That doesn't create mystery. It kills it. Because once she knows too much, her mind stops wondering. And when she stops wondering, she stops missing. Mystery is a kind of presence, one that doesn't require words, only restraint. It's the quiet dominance of being the man who doesn't need to explain himself. And in a world addicted to oversharing, that composure becomes magnetic. Every time she sees you not reacting, not posting, not chasing, she starts to wonder, how can he be so calm? Why doesn't he care? What's he doing that's keeping him so centered? The irony is brutal the less you reveal. The more she invests emotionally, her ego wants answers. Her heart wants connection, but your silence gives her neither, so she turns inward, replaying your last conversation, dissecting every text, reanalyzing every memory like a crime scene investigator. You've become the unanswered question she can't let go of. And in psychology, unanswered questions always evolve into obsession, because obsession is nothing more than curiosity that couldn't find closure. Here's what most men never understand. When you feed curiosity, it is. When you starve it, it multiplies. That's why the Stoics valued silence not as withdrawal, but as power. They understood that the unknown is the most powerful form of presence because it forces others to confront their own uncertainty, to sit in the discomfort of not knowing. Your job isn't to make her curious. It's to stay composed enough to let her mind do the work. That's what separates the average man who reacts to every emotion from the Stoic man who understands that attention must be earned, never chased. Let her imagination run wild. Let her fill in the blanks with stories she'll never confirm. Let her wonder why your name still feels heavy even when you've said nothing. Because the truth is, she doesn't miss you yet. She misses the control she lost when you stopped being predictable, and that loss of control is what lights the fire of curiosity. Soon, she'll start noticing the silence in her own life, how other men overshare, how easily they chase, how little mystery they hold, and in that comparison, your restraint becomes priceless. She won't say it out loud, but deep down, she'll start to crave what she can't explain. That's the beginning of desire's rebirth. So, don't post, don't prove, don't perform. Let her curiosity do what you no longer need to keep you alive in her mind. Because curiosity doesn't fade with time. It deepens with distance. And one day, when her thoughts wander back to you again, not out of habit, but out of hunger for understanding, that's when you'll know she's no longer just wondering. She's remembering. You don't need to make her think about you. You just need to give her nothing to stop thinking about. When you walk away, the first part of her that reacts isn't her heart. It's her ego. At first, she doesn't feel pain. She feels confusion. Not, I miss him, but, why isn't he chasing me? That's the moment her ego wakes up, and it starts scrambling to restore control. Because understand this, in modern dating, most women are not used to true silence. They're used to men filling every gap, texting, checking in, apologizing for things they didn't do. Validation has become a kind of background noise, and your withdrawal calm. Cold, deliberate is the first real silence she's heard in years. That silence does something powerful. It disconnects her from the constant stream of reassurance her ego was feeding on. She checks her phone, no message. She posts a story, no reaction. She throws a small bait, and you don't bite. That absence, to her ego, feels like starvation. You've removed her from the emotional buffet she didn't even realize she was addicted to. And the mind, when starved of attention, doesn't crave love, it craves validation. That's why she'll start testing you again, even after you've walked away. Not because she suddenly cares more, But because her ego wants proof, it still matters. It's not about you, it's about control. And control is the ego's favorite illusion. The Stoics warned about this long before modern psychology. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not events that disturb us, but our opinions about them." The female ego isn't shaken by your absence, it's shaken by what your absence means. That she no longer has influence, that her reflection no longer shapes your mood, that her beauty, her charm, her presence no longer dictate your peace. And that realization burns deeper than heartbreak ever could. For a while, she'll try to cover it up with noise, posting more, laughing louder, pretending she's unbothered. But beneath that display is the same quiet question, repeating over and over, why didn't he react? It's not love she's craving, it's power. Because ego seeks control. The Stoic seeks balance. And that's the difference between you and every man she's known. Most men feed the ego because they're afraid of losing the heart. They respond to her stories. Double text when she withdraws. Prove they're still available. But every time they do that, they reinforce the illusion that she still holds authority over their emotions. You, on the other hand, don't feed it. You starve it. And in that starvation, truth begins to surface. When the ego loses control, the heart starts to speak. Only when she realizes she can't make you react does she start to question what she really lost. That's when the shift begins from power to vulnerability. She starts replaying everything with new eyes. How calm you were when she tested you. How centered you stayed when she pulled away. How quietly you exited instead of arguing. Those memories don't flatter her ego, they humble it. Because now, she sees what her pride refused to acknowledge. You weren't just another man fighting for her attention. You were the only man who didn't need it. That's when the discomfort turns into reflection. She starts wondering, was I too cold? Did I take him for granted? Why does his silence feel heavier than my words ever did? That's not guilt. That's awakening. Because deep down, she realizes something sacred. Your peace was never hers to control. The man who walks away without resentment reveals the truth that words never could, that detachment is not indifference. It's self-respect. And that's the one energy a wounded ego can never compete with. Your silence becomes her mirror. It shows her exactly where she's still unhealed, how much she depended on external validation, how much of her worth came from being wanted. And once she sees that reflection, she can't unsee it. Here's the paradox. The more she tries to restore her power, the weaker it becomes. Because validation loses its value when it's no longer freely given. When you walked away, you didn't take her comfort. You took her mirror, the one that told her she was always in control. And when that mirror shatters, all that's left is truth. Truth that the power she thought she had wasn't power, it was your attention. And now that it's gone, she finally realizes how fragile it was all along. Ego seeks control. The Stoic seeks balance. And balance is what the ego fears most, because it means the game is over. So don't rush back in when her ego sends out a flare. Don't feed the beast that silence was meant to starve. Because when you refuse to react, you're not being cold. You're giving her the chance to meet herself without the illusion of control. And that's the most powerful gift a man can give, the space for her ego to fall, so her heart can finally wake up. Here's the irony: most men never understand. You don't become unforgettable by staying. You become unforgettable by leaving well. Because when you walk away with composure, no drama, nor resentment, no words to defend your worth, you create something far more powerful than attachment. You create contrast, and contrast is the birthplace of realization. At first, she doesn't see it. She thinks your absence is just a silence she can replace. She believes someone else will bring the same energy, the same calm, the same presence. But time starts working for you the moment you let go, because the world and every man she meets begins to remind her of you. When she's talking to another guy, she notices how he interrupts her mid-sentence, how he brags instead of listens, how his attention feels scattered instead of grounded. And for a split second, her mind flashes back to you, to the way you looked her in the eye without trying to impress, to how your presence felt like stillness instead of noise. That's comparison. And comparison is the silent karma of perception. She might not say it out loud, but every man she meets becomes a mirror reflecting what she lost. The tone of his voice, the way he reacts under pressure, the way he needs validation, all of it exposes what she took for granted. You see, people don't just miss you, they miss the version of themselves that felt calm, seen, and balanced when they were with you. That's why she'll tell herself she's moved on. But her nervous system disagrees, because while she's trying to build new connections, her body is remembering the rhythm of your presence, the tone of your calmness, the tempo of your restraint. That rhythm becomes the silent metronome against which she measures every new interaction. And here's the brutal truth most won't measure up. That's not arrogance, that's nature. Because rarity always reveals itself through repetition. The more experiences she has, the clearer your difference becomes. Every man who over-explains makes her remember how you stayed quiet. Every man who chases too soon reminds her of how you walked away with ease. Every man who loses composure under pressure makes her crave the man who never did. You've become her benchmark, not because you tried to, but because you didn't. Every man she meets becomes a reminder of what she lost. That's not a line. That's a law. It's the karma of comparison, the universe's way of returning awareness to those who ignored value when it was present. But here's what's truly poetic about it. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to post your progress, your wins, or your new life. The world will do the reminding for you, because while she's chasing distractions, reality will start stitching your name into everything familiar: the cafe you went to, the cologne that smells like your hoodie, the phrase she once laughed at, but now hears from someone else who can't deliver it with the same weight. That's when the visuals start haunting her, not dramatic flashbacks, but subtle echoes, a reflection in a window that looks like your silhouette, a stranger's laugh that sounds like yours, a song lyric that lands like a punch to the chest. These moments don't make her cry immediately. They make her pause, and that pause, that 2-second silence where memory meets regret, is where missing you takes root. Here's what you must understand. You can't rush realization. You can't text her into awareness. You can't argue her into valuing you. The only teacher she listens to now is absence. Because absence doesn't talk, it demonstrates. It forces her to experience the truth you once tried to explain. She begins to see that you weren't trying to control her, you were controlling yourself. That your silence wasn't punishment, it was peace. That your detachment wasn't emotional distance, it was mastery. Now, every time another man fumbles, her mind compares. And each comparison reinforces one simple truth. You didn't leave to make her miss you. You left because you refused to lose yourself. That's the moment realization hits. When she finally understands that you weren't like the rest. Because you never competed for a place in her life, you simply walked toward your purpose. And that's what made her feel your absence more deeply than any message ever could. The same silence that once annoyed her becomes the silence she now longs for. That's the paradox of walking away. When you stop being accessible, you stop being replaceable. And when she finally realizes that truth, it's already too late, because by the time she's ready to appreciate your presence, you've already learned to live without hers. Silence has a strange way of reshaping memory. At first, it feels like absence. Then it becomes an echo, and eventually, that echo turns into nostalgia, a haunting sweetness that makes the past feel warmer than it actually was. When you walk away, you don't just leave her with space. You leave her with reflections. Every laugh, every shared glance, every ordinary moment between you becomes amplified in her memory, not because it was perfect, but because it was hers. That's the secret most men never realize when she says she misses you. She's not just missing the man, she's missing the feeling she once had in your presence. She misses how safe she felt, opening up. She misses the way time slowed down when you spoke calmly. She misses how grounded she felt, standing next to you, as if your composure lent her peace she couldn't find within herself. She misses who she became when she was around you. Human memory is not a record. It's a painter. It doesn't replay moments as they were. It romanticizes them, softens the edges, adds golden light to scenes that once caused pain. That's why, weeks or months after you walk away, she begins to see you differently. Not as the man she argued with or took for granted, but as the calm center of a chapter that now feels irreplaceable. She'll start to remember your stillness, the way you didn't rush to fill silence. She'll recall how your eyes didn't flinch when she tried to provoke a reaction. At the time, she might have read it as indifference. Now she sees it for what it was, discipline, and that realization stings because it exposes a contrast. She can't ignore you, grew stronger by walking away, while she's still circling the same thoughts, still replaying the same scenes. Here's the truth. Psychology rarely admits nostalgia is selective amnesia. It filters pain, highlights comfort, and replays only the moments that validate longing. So when she scrolls through old messages or passes by the cafe where you once sat together, her brain isn't remembering the arguments, it's remembering the feeling of being chosen. That emotional recall becomes addictive because it connects her to something she no longer has. And every small reminder, a scent, a song, a phrase becomes a trigger. The same song she once shared with you now feels different. The same route she walks to work suddenly feels heavier, She won't understand why her chest tightens when she hears your name. But it's because her body remembers what her mind tries to forget. She doesn't miss you. She misses who she was when she was with you. That's the kind of nostalgia that burns quietly, the kind that hides behind smiles, that surfaces at 2 a.m. when the phone is silent, that whispers your name when she thought she had moved on. Most men destroy this natural process because they can't stay patient. They try to remind her of what they had. They send messages, post memories, or try to reignite connection. But that only kills the power of absence, because when you feed nostalgia, you turn it from emotional reflection into emotional saturation, and she no longer has to imagine. You don't want to remind her. You want her mind to do the reminding for you. The more she tries to escape the memory, the more it finds her in the small, unguarded moments. At the grocery store, in a conversation about nothing, in a scent that passes by, and suddenly, for a second, it feels like you're right there again. That's when nostalgia turns into haunting, not because she wants to be haunted, but because she can't unsee the contrast between what was real and what came after. Every memory begins to evolve. The smile you gave her becomes more vivid. The words you said gain new meaning. Even your silence begins to speak louder in her recollection. And the more time passes, the more her mind polishes the story, not because you were flawless, but because the human brain is wired to preserve what felt emotionally significant. She starts realizing that peace is rare, and that your presence gave her something she didn't understand until it was gone: emotional safety without effort. Other men might excite her. They might even distract her, but no one gives her the calm that came from you, the way your composure wrapped around chaos like armor. And that's what nostalgia always returns to, not fireworks, but stability. You've now become more than a memory. You've become a reference point. Every conversation, every flirtation, every attempt to move on will be quietly measured against the peace she once felt around you. That's how nostalgia binds the heart, not through grand gestures, but through emotional calibration. And eventually, when her laughter feels hollow, when the crowd fades and the room falls silent, that's when she finally understands what you represented. You weren't a temporary thrill, you were her mirror of calm. Your absence becomes her teacher. Your silence becomes her reflection. So don't interrupt that process. Don't reappear too soon. Don't try to speed up what time is already perfecting for you. The longer she sits with those memories, the deeper they root. And when nostalgia matures into realization, she won't just remember you fondly, she'll feel an ache that no new experience can soothe. That ache isn't about missing a man. It's about missing the peace she once found through him, a peace she didn't recognize until it was gone. And that's when nostalgia becomes your greatest ally, because the mind can forget faces, but it never forgets how peace felt. When you finally walk away and hold your silence, something subtle yet profound begins to happen inside her. At first, she believes she's in control. She tells herself she's fine, that she doesn't care, that she's moved on. But control is an illusion, and illusions fade fast under the weight of uncertainty. The longer you stay silent, the more that illusion begins to crack. What used to be predictable, your attention, your presence, your validation, is now gone. Her brain starts searching for the pattern it once relied on. The human mind hates losing what it once had power over, and when she can't find the pattern, when she can't predict you anymore, her control transforms into craving. This is the final psychological shift, the one most men never reach, because they break too soon. They text back, they check in, they seek reassurance. But the man who understands Stoic psychology knows this truth. He who controls nothing commands everything. The moment you no longer try to control her reactions, her emotions, or the outcome, you regain control of the only thing that truly matters, yourself. When a woman feels that loss of control, her mind goes into overdrive. She starts wondering, why hasn't he called? Did he already move on? Was I the only one who felt something? Each unanswered question deepens her curiosity. Each moment of silence stretches the emotional tension further, and the more she tries to push those thoughts away, the louder they get. She'll scroll through your profile, looking for signs. She'll mention your name in passing, hoping someone else brings you up. She might even post things to test you, quotes, songs, little messages designed to poke at your attention. But you won't respond. You won't flinch, because you've already transcended that stage. That's the difference between attachment and mastery. An attached man reacts to her behavior. A Stoic man lets her behavior reveal the truth. As days pass, she begins to realize that silence isn't just absence, it's composure. It's a language that says, I don't need to prove my worth by chasing what doesn't value me. That realization unsettles her because it breaks the rule she's unconsciously lived by, that attention equals importance. Most men reinforce this rule by rushing back the moment she reaches out. But when you don't, when you hold your ground with calm indifference, you send a signal that her validation no longer defines your peace. And that, ironically, is what reawakens her attraction. Because women don't crave control, they crave stability. And the man who cannot be shaken, who doesn't need her response to feel centered, becomes magnetic. Now, her ego starts losing ground. The same pride that once made her pull away begins to crumble under the weight of curiosity and emotional contrast. She starts replaying the moments where she underestimated you, where she assumed you'd always be there. Her inner dialogue shifts from confidence to confusion. Why isn't he reacting? Did he ever care? Has he replaced me? And beneath that confusion lies a quiet, growing panic, because she realizes she's no longer the one being chased. She's now the one doing the chasing, even if only in her mind. That's the Stoic paradox. When you release the need to be chosen, you become the choice. Craving is not love, it's imbalance. It's the mind trying to reclaim equilibrium after losing certainty. That's why she might act colder when she sees you. She'll try to mask it. She'll pretend you don't affect her. But her actions will betray her: the longer glance, the slightly nervous laugh, the sudden appearance in your orbit by coincidence. Her ego will fight to hide the craving, but the body never lies. You'll see it in her posture, in her tone, in the way she lingers a moment too long. That's not control, that's chemistry. remembering what peace felt like. The beauty of this stage is that you no longer need to do anything. Your silence has already done the work. Her mind is doing the chasing for you. Most men collapse right here. They see the cracks forming and think it's their cue to return, to explain, to reconnect, to reclaim. But that only resets the dynamic back to the beginning. You don't return for validation. You return only if it aligns with your peace. Because the point of walking away was never to manipulate her emotions, it was to master your own, to remind yourself that love should never come from need, but from choice. And if she comes back, she won't just be coming back to the same man she left. She'll be facing a version of you. She no longer has control over a man who no longer moves from emotion, but from intention. By now, the shift is complete. Her control has dissolved. Her ego has cracked. Her curiosity has turned to craving, and you, the man she once thought she could predict, have become the mystery she can't stop thinking about. She'll miss your energy, your steadiness, your silence, not because they were loud, but because they were rare. That's when she truly understands what she lost, not a man who chased, but a man who walked away without resentment, a man who loved with strength and let go with grace. When you stop needing control, everything you desire starts orbiting back toward you. That's Stoicism in motion. That's emotional mastery disguised as detachment. That's what turns absence into power. So remember this: you don't win by reacting, you win by remaining. Remaining still, remaining composed, remaining untouchable. Because the moment she realizes that your peace cannot be disturbed is the moment she starts craving the man who mastered it. When you finally learn to walk away without anger, to stay silent without resentment, to love without losing yourself, you've already won. Because true power isn't about controlling anyone. It's about controlling your response. It's about knowing that your peace, your energy, your self-respect aren't negotiable. When you walk away, you don't lose her. You find you, and the man who finds himself can never be replaced. Let her feel the silence. Let her wonder why the man who once chased her now walks with calm indifference. Let her discover what every woman eventually realizes too late, that the strongest love a man can give is the one he refuses to beg for. This isn't revenge. This is rebirth. You've evolved from a man who reacts into a man who leads. So if this message hit you deep, if you've ever walked away from someone who didn't see your worth, drop a comment below and write, "I choose peace over control," because that's what Stoicism teaches. That's what true masculinity looks like: stillness under chaos. And before you go, remember, you are not meant to chase what walks away. You are meant to become so steady, so grounded, so rare that everything meant for you finds its way back on its own. Stay strong, stay silent, stay stoic.